Hello everyone and welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. It is an immaculate day. Thank you so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. Today I am going to discuss my thoughts from the first episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch, which premiered on Disney Plus on May the 4th. And first of all, before we get started, there will be spoilers for that first episode, so if you have not seen the first episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch, go check it out and then come back and watch this video. So alright, that's the spoiler warning. There will be spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Let's get started. Well, my thoughts were that overall the episode was pretty good. There were a couple aspects really just relating to the cameos that didn't quite work for me, but as a whole, I really enjoyed the episode. I think the characterization was great. I'm really excited to see the second episode, which will come out on Friday. And let me just dive in to address a couple different points from the episode that I would like to talk about. So one thing that I really did like was that to open the episode, the Star Wars The Clone Wars logo appears, and then fades into the Bad Batch logo. Also, Tom Kane's opening narration returns, which I really love. I wonder if that will be in other episodes, or if this is just going to be in the first episode. I'm not sure if in every episode the Clone Wars logo will appear and then fade into the Bad Batch logo. I would kind of doubt that. I hope that we do see more of the opening narrations. I really do like those. I'm not sure if we will. It's a possibility, though. I guess we'll just have to wait, and we'll find out on Friday when the second episode debuts. So the thing that I loved the most about this episode was the depth of the Bad Batch that is revealed and the characterization of all the characters. Now, one of my biggest complaints when we saw that the Bad Batch was becoming a series was I was just wondering how it was going to work. The Bad Batch were pretty one-dimensional in their arc from Star Wars The Clone Wars. However, that is not the case in the first episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch. We see a lot of character depth. The relationship between Hunter and Crosshair is great. That was my favorite aspect of the episode, probably. It looks like Crosshair will be the primary antagonist. Hunter might be the primary protagonist if we're going to follow one specific member of the Bad Batch more so than others. I love the scene where Tarkin orders Crosshair's chip to be amplified. I think that really helps to reinforce how the clones' free will was stripped from them when Order 66 was enacted. And I think that will probably be the main focus of the series, is the relationship that Crosshair has with Hunter and the rest of the Bad Batch. I hope that Crosshair will eventually be able to have his chip removed. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how that plot point develops as the series goes on. And I think that one reason we see this difference between Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars The Bad Batch in terms of in the Clone Wars, the Bad Batch characters weren't very well rounded to now in the Bad Batch series, the characters are beginning to have a lot more well-roundedness to them and a lot more depth. I think that's just because in that arc from Star Wars The Clone Wars, there were a lot of scenes that focused on a lot of different characters to give them moments to shine. We saw scenes with Anakin, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, Cody, Rex, Echo, the Bad Batch, Padme, Wat Tambor, and Admiral Trench. With all those characters, it was really hard to give all of them character development. In my opinion, most of the character development from that arc went to Rex, Echo, and Anakin. And because of that, the Bad Batch came across as being one-dimensional. However, now in the Bad Batch series, they are the main characters. They are the main focus of the series. They're able to get more character moments instead of just the heavy action sequences, which they were primarily featured in from that arc from Star Wars The Clone Wars. I really liked their characterization in this episode, and I think it will continue as the series progresses. Another thing to talk about is I made the prediction that the first 70-some minute premiere episode was going to be the second Bad Batch arc from Star Wars The Clone Wars. That was not the case. However, there's still room for that story to be told, as the opening episode does not override the events of that arc, I do not believe, so maybe one day we will see it at some points. That was kind of my long shot hope, so I wasn't too disappointed. But just talking about some of the cameos in this episode, there were a lot of them. Really, I think this series does feel like the next season, an 8th season of Star Wars The Clone Wars, with the exception being that the main characters, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Captain Rex, are not in the series, because otherwise we saw a lot of the same locations, we saw a lot of the same side characters, and that gets us into the cameos of this episode. Right off the bat, the first named characters that we see are Obi-Wan and Anakin, and General Grievous. We see Mace Windu, so that gets a lot of those cameos out of the way, which I liked, because I think it's important to acknowledge some of those main characters from the Star Wars The Clone Wars series, and I think the opening narration with some of those scenes from Revenge of the Sith played out in animation form does that job and does the job well. Next we saw Kanan from Star Wars Rebels back when he was a Padawan named Caleb. Now this cameo, it didn't really land for me. I know a lot of people are talking about how it contradicts one of the comics. I hadn't read that comic, so that wasn't as big of a deal for me, but I can certainly see why some people were disappointed in that regard. But really, I just feel like it was kind of shoehorned in. I'm not sure it made much sense story-wise, so I was a little bit taken aback with that cameo, but it didn't hinder my enjoyment of the episode too much. We also saw more battle droids voiced by Matthew Wood, which I really liked. I think he does a great job, and the battle droids bring some humor. We might see some more later on in the series. We'll just have to wait and see. We saw Darth Sidious. We saw Tarkin. Another thing I really liked about this series was that some of the smaller characters from Star Wars The Clone Wars return in the first episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch. They're voiced by their same actors from Star Wars The Clone Wars, which I liked as well. And I'm just going to name some of the ones that I liked. AZI-3, Lama Su, Nala Se, Saw Gerrera. My favorite of those has to be AZI-3. He was a big character in the Fives arc when Fives uncovers the secret with the inhibitor chips. I really loved that arc, and I was very excited to see AZI-3 return. Part of me hoped that AZI-3 would actually go with the Bad Batch and become one of the regular series members on the show. I don't think that's the case, but I love seeing the AZI-3 cameo. That was probably my favorite cameo of the entire episode. I'm also really interested in seeing Omega. She is a female clone as revealed in the first episode. I really want to see how her relationship develops with the Bad Batch. That's something that I thought was very well done, and I'm looking forward to see how that advances as the show goes on. And finally, I just want to kind of look on Star Wars animation as a whole and see which Star Wars animated series premiere is my favorite. And I think probably it would have to go, and last would be Star Wars Resistance, second last would be Star Wars Rebels, and then that's where it's a little bit of a toss-up. I think I'll probably right now just say it's a tie between the series premiere of Star Wars The Clone Wars and the series premiere of Star Wars The Bad Batch. I think one thing that the series has working for it, well, both series have working for it, is that their series premiere, they're able to put more emphasis on the newer characters that they introduced to the series, because some of the main characters were already known by the audience. For example, in Star Wars The Clone Wars, the audience is already familiar with Anakin, Obi-Wan, Padme, Yoda, basically most of the characters besides Captain Rex and Ahsoka. So I feel like despite Star Wars The Clone Wars having so many characters that the show is introducing, most of the characters the fans already know. So when the new characters are introduced, like Ahsoka and Rex, their characters are able to have a bigger impact. And I think we see something similar in this series. There were so many characters in the first episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch. However, the vast majority of the characters are characters that fans, especially fans of Star Wars The Clone Wars, are already familiar with. I mean, there are character references to Anakin, Obi-Wan, Rex, characters that fans already know and love. Again, we see a lot of those secondary characters in the first episode, like Tarkin, Palpatine, AZI-3, the cloners on Kamino. Fans are already familiar with those characters, so when a new character like Omega is introduced, it's able to have a little bit more of an impact, and fans are able to take to the introduction of a new character, I think, a little bit easier and have a little bit more time understanding the new character, as opposed to if a series is trying to introduce a bunch of new characters to an audience at the same time. So overall, I really enjoyed the episode, and I thank you for tuning in to this episode 1 discussion. If you like this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you considered checking out my Patreon account. And again, thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. I greatly appreciate it. Have a great day.